thing. You mentioned in one of your recent interviews, because it reminded me of the interview with this guy. Let me just screenshot this here. Put it on the here. The Immortality Key: The Secret History of the Religion with No Name by Brian Murarescu. And it goes about, very deep into psychedelics, and it's got beautiful, book reviews and everything else. So, and Joe Rogan had an interview with this author, Brian Murarescu, and you mentioned in one of your recent interviews that you think I don't want to paraphrase you, but you said something like, it could be that Jesus Christ and his followers were using psychedelics and hallucinogenic, substances. Do you want to elaborate? Do you have a position on psychedelics at all? Are you an advocate that's interested in? What do you think about Christianity and religion and spirituality and enlightenment? Is there
I think that the oligarchy, I mentioned that their obsession has been the revival of global oligarchical feudalism under some unipolar imperial class. With an occult, inner esoteric elite with their own, occult perspective on the universe of an evil god that they're made in the image of, a whole perverse inner culture core, with their that involves grooming the next generation according to these long traditions going back to ancient days of Babylon and the Roman Empire. The most evil days of the Roman Empire. It's the same worst of those traditions. And they want to organize society with different layers of these similar but diffused occult religious orders down all the way to the plebes, who are supposed to just be happy slaves with their own spirituality. The auxiliaries above will be happy slaves with their own spirituality and their own egotistical mythologies that give them a sense of elitism, but they themselves are peons for the higher echelon above them, all the way to the points of some inner core. So I think that's the general, and you need a political structure, a political economic structure to make that happen materially. And that's the whole fight for world government, a depopulated, COP27 type of green global dictatorship, masquerading maybe with some capitalist surface appearances, but not really. It's all feudalism. But ultimately, I think their primary obsession has been to create a global religious system that's shaping the self-image of man around a way of being and thinking of our spirituality, which is a rehashing of the old Eleusian mystery religions of ancient Greece, Persia, Babylon, and Rome, which are animated by, I think, psychedelics, early psychedelics that were derived. I believe that the author that you referenced, Brian, whose last name I can't pronounce,
Murarescu, yeah,
Murarescu. I think that it's true what he's saying, that ancient cults used psychedelics derived from plant or wheat blight, which does have a bit of a hallucinatory, effect on the mind, and other things, mushrooms, other forms of mushrooms in various shamanic rituals have used that to also have a similar psychedelic experience. That was part of the rites of initiation within the mystery religions, pre-Christian, and also this is what people like St. Augustine and the early Christian fathers were fighting against, was the perversion of the of early Christianity by these sects that were just rehashing the old mystery religions that involved, Baal worship, Dionysian worship, Apollo worship. Apollo just being a prototype for Lucifer, who is sort of the rebellious son of Zeus, who had too big of an ego and was punished and fell, but was still the god of light. So that's Apollo. And before Apollo was sort of the revamping of the god of Marduk, the key god of the Babylonian mystery schools. So these gods just sort of get rehashed, rebranded according to different cultures that they're going to be applied to as but it's the same model. So I think that the Jesuits were created by the Habsburgs as part of one dimension of a multifaceted secret society operation of Gnostic cults to undermine and undo authentic Christianity, which is based upon the moral faith, but also moral action at the same time. So faith and action, not faith or action. To love God, love your fellow neighbor, and love yourself, as the book of Matthew prescribes, in a manner that is anti-imperial. So you want to do it from the standpoint of organizing against powers and principalities who are the enemies of Christianity, and not simply like, making people feel good. But the mystery schools, I think, that are being revived now, and Brian Murarescu, also Graham Hancock is another popular promoter of this today, is essentially reviving the old ancient mystery cults that Augustine and others did battle with under a new, more synthetic drug cult, calling itself in some cases Christianity. Like it'll be it's being repackaged in some cases for neo pseudo Christians or people who don't want to be atheists anymore, or whoever. And it's being set up as a groundwork for a new global synthetic religion with a UFO twist. So they're also preparing the idea that we communicate with beings from other dimensions, which different people thought of were as ETs, but in actuality, these are most likely, we've been told, beings from the 11th dimension or 5th dimension or 7th dimension, whatever the fuck those things are, because really they're just mathematical entities that don't exist, as far as like these dimensions, right? So they're preparing the climate for that, and there's things like Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam is one of many different operations that have been refined over the Cold War to use holographic technology, light shows in the sky that will then project either Christ coming back, like they've tried to do in Brazil a couple of years ago, or like they tried to do to overthrow Castro under the Edward Lansdale project of elimination by illumination, which is what, the idea was the CIA was going to project a light show over Cuba, projecting the second coming of the Christ, who wants the Cubans to overthrow Castro, who's the Antichrist. That was like a CIA project that JFK stopped.
Yeah.
So they've been working on this sort of shit for a long time.
Or Werner von Braun, with his last card, that I think that was one of his last words, Werner von Braun, with his sort of, they would use it as a false flag alien invasion.
He had a friend who recorded or who testifies that she heard him say that he told that to her, and it's possible. I mean, he was on the inside. He knew how the machine works. So the idea that they would use like an alien invasion to try to unify the world around a common threat, that's something that was even put online. We're making a documentary about this, my wife and myself, and Jason, our friend Jason Dahl, who's a master filmmaker, on how the same agencies that killed JFK, including Alan Dulles, everyone JFK fired, Charles Cabell, Richard Bissell, who was the manager of Area 51 and the deputy director of the CIA, who worked with to overthrow Castro as well. They're the same. They were all participating in a leading way into the UFO cult throughout the entirety of the Cold War. So we're going to go into some crazy detail there, but I think, what you're seeing with it's not just the Immortality Key that's trying to bring back or romanticize the cult of Eleusis and the cult of Dionysius, but there's thousands of these books all being promoted. There's Netflix videos, documentaries, other things to promote this idea that that's what Christianity was. Christ was just an initiate into the Eleusian drug mysteries, and that's how he was able to recruit so many people, because he gave them drugs. I think it's satanic. I think this is actually satanic. And I don't believe in I don't use that word lightly, and I don't believe in like a literal force that is Satan, but I believe in evil, that human beings can be evil. Yeah. And this is part of
just look at the pedophilia, the systemic pedophilia and the Satanism and the sadistic Satanism. I mean, it's mind-blowing. Every time we're like, okay, we know everything now, and then you wake up again next day, like, oh my God, it's beyond imagination of an evil. I mean, it's it's really, I have no words sometimes, but
no, me too. So that's my thought. That's my thought on this shit. Is I think it's a satanic new spirituality controlled by the elite as part of a new global great narrative that they want to bring online. but it's nothing to be trusted. And I'm not against, like, look, for psychedelics, the way I approach it is there for extreme cases of hardcore depression where your brain is badly wired, certain types of psychedelics might, under a controlled circumstance, help to depattern and help give you the type of space you need to find a way of thinking out of your depression. Maybe. But the issue that is often left out is that the reason why people are so friggin' depressed is because we have such an unnatural system that is ultimately of globalization that is so unnatural and ultimately evil, that we're told is good, that we have to adapt to, that we know deep down inside is not. And so, of course, people get nihilistic. They our culture is shit. Our economic system is shit. We got no prospects for a future. So, of course, people will get depressed. And sure, then you could find radical therapeutic techniques to help people live happily or satisfactorily within that corrupt system. But at the end of the day, that has to be dealt with. And that's often not even discussed. So, and my last message for people who want to either do psychedelics or want to continue to, or maybe get into it to explore psychedelics to open up new doors of perception of their mind, the way Aldous Huxley,
or creativity, or understanding. Like it's also about comprehension, like comprehending from a totally different perspective, which you have never thought of. Like so being creative, or
maybe. But what I would say is they want to skip steps. They want the effect of creativity without having first learned how this beautiful instrument called our mind even works naturally in the first place. So they've only known how their mind works when it is not natural, but they've never gotten an experience because of our shit education system and shit culture. They've never gotten to get the taste of how to work and use this beautiful instrument in the first place. And they want to just then skip steps from a sick state into a creative psychedelic state that maybe might give them a better spirituality without learning how the mind works first. So I would just say, learn how the mind works when it's being rigorous, productive, listen to classical music, read original writings, like do original work, and start write your thoughts down. Like people should learn how the mind works in a sober, creative way, and then revisit with some psychedelics if you want or something, and compare, are you more effective that way? Is that a more effective type of creativity than the type you had when you were using your instrument in a sober, or not? But come up, but don't skip steps. That's my whole thing. Every time people skip steps, things get messy.
Right. I mean, I can only, I know it from other people's encounter and experience, and also from my own. And I mean, I can only speak positively about it. Would it be, psilocybin or, other, so-called magic mushroom? It really, I mean, it's a key. It's a shortcut, to be honest with you. It is a shortcut, and it's a key that you can open any portal, any door you can go into with a question, and it really helps you, to whatever that is, whether it's a trauma, depression, something that is really, or you talked about the educational system, or about, childhood, about parenthood, I mean, you grow up with all this shit, all your life long, and then it catapults you into really a different, perception, consciousness, thinking process, dimension.
Well, like I said, I did a lot of shrooms in my day as well. And I could say for the most part, it was a positive experience. Back when I was still, it's the me that was still walking in a lot of ignorance. I didn't start my exploration about what the hell was shaping my world. And for what it was, I wouldn't say it's evil. I wouldn't say I would say I had good experiences through that. Sometimes I had some bad trips too. But the overall idea of shortcuts for me has become, now through 20 years of like pretty much ongoing research and like obsessive ongoing research to try to figure out the truth in an uncompromising way, and to figure out how I can become a better person and a better possible leader that I need to become, because I'm not there yet. And I immerse myself in speeches of JFK and Martin Luther King to study how they're thinking, how they're feeling. I read a lot of speech. So for me, I'm trying to use a lot of very high standards as my role models. And I've noticed that it didn't take me long to notice that my mind on shrooms or on weed was not helping me when I began that that new identity and that new type of exploration, it didn't help me.
Mm.
And I'm saying that in a very light way, but it probably was crippling when I started that type of new type of rigor and self-discipline of my mind and my research.
Mm-hmm.
It was doing the opposite of what I wanted. So that's my experience for me. It might be different for other people. Everyone's a different person, but that's for me. So
and there's a fundamental difference, right? I mean, between like THC, cannabis, and psychedelic, like psilocybin or magic mushroom. You do that maybe if you do it like on a regular basis, at all like once a year or every 2 or 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not something like,
I don't know. I don't know about the frequency. All I know is the oligarchy wants us to be on it. That's why the Harvard psilocybin project was created by MK Ultra in 1953 and ran all the way up through the 1960s. That's where Ted Kaczynski was processed.
Oh.
The reason why psilocybins are a part of our world is because the CIA and the same people that want to kill us want it to be there. Mm-hmm. It's not like it got out of control and then the hippies just were so great that they had to do a war on drugs to try to put it back in the bottle. It wasn't that. The war on drugs was designed to fail and to create more organized crime networks that were affiliated with those same people who were in the banks, in Wall Street, in London, in Washington, who were on the surface trying to put every petty drug dealer in prison. It was never meant to work. It was always designed to make the problem even worse and make people want it even more. And that's why, so psilocybins, just to restate, just like LSD 25 and just like DMT, were products of CIA MK Ultra research and were put into our culture because they want it there.
Yeah. But it's always the intention behind it also is determined, it is very important, I think. What's the intention? How do you what's the setting? How do you use it? Are you being manipulated? I mean, is it out of a free intention and a free, I don't know. Is there some subtle differences do you see or I mean, I do get it.
I think for people who are in a state of serious trauma and depression, there might be therapeutic benefits to depatterning, which is what the psychedelics are quite good at. Depatterning neural pathways that are too locked in and rigid. That might be beneficial from a therapeutic standpoint, but you can do that as well, I think, in a more organic way that might take more work in a more durable, substantial way without that.
Right.
It's just that sometimes in an emergency, you might need that if you're on the verge of committing suicide. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, probably I'm come to the place now where I'm I don't think that there's too many positive applications of it at this stage in human civilization. I think we have to get rid of the oligarchy and revisit the question. I think we have to. That's
very, very fascinating. Your perspective and your position on that. Okay. But even like in a setting, with a shaman or curandero in the jungle, you spend 3 months in the jungle, like a holistic ayahuasca, ceremony. Is that something? Because I've never done that. I'm just,
I've never done that either. I've seen a lot of testimonies of people like Graham Hancock, who I've read a lot of Graham Hancock's work, who's done a lot of that. And no, I mean, I think that every culture had their imperial drug cults and mystery religions that were tied to different types of what, in the West, we might call South American shamanistic or African voodoo or other shamanistic structures that had variations on the theme, but they're all the same variations and all the same theme. And I think they're ultimately things that cripple our ability to be the type of humans that are made in the image of a living, loving, creative, reasonable God that the oligarchy has been trying to destroy and undermine in every religion, as far as whenever it manifests in the Islamic context or in the Buddhist context or Hindu context. There's this very positive, brilliant idea of human beings as creative geniuses with dignity, freedom that we will fight for and die for to defend, and organize systems and laws in defense of against the oligarchy, whether it's and then there's the same techniques that are used to undermine that in ancient times in India, in China, in the advanced Olmec cultures that had advanced civilization in South America that involve similar techniques, Aztecs, other things. And so the way I see it, my current analysis is that the shamanistic religions or spiritual paths are carryovers, residuals of the oligarchical agencies that destroyed from within the societies that were very advanced and elevated of the Americas, or of Africa as well, that had very advanced civilizations that were like far advanced than even Europe in the 12th century, that were undermined from within by these organized cults that usually have a common organizing center.
Are you going to incorporate this, what you just talked about, into the documentary series?
I might, but it's so hard because there's so many moving parts that I know it's difficult for people's minds to sort of look at several processes at the same time, that I might have to do a series of videos or focus more on the UFO psyop and maybe just allude to these the religious manipulation, but I don't know how to make it work yet fully. I'm still working on this. I've gone through like 18 scripts and I'm trying to make it work.
But hey, just for the final question, this whole Grush test, hearing and with this UFO, that's a total military intelligence psyop.
Yeah,
right?
It's a military intelligence psyop. We're all being fucked with. They're screwing with us.
Okay. Well,
yeah, that's going to be in the documentary. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're really looking forward. When is it going to come out? I mean, are you
hopefully soon? Hopefully very soon. I'm aiming for September.
Okay.
Maybe mid to late September. Right now, it's still in script stage, so we'll see how many. Usually, when I do it, our filmmaker will produce a beautiful thing, but with a ton of problems, and then I'm gonna have to send it back, and we do 18 revisions.
Yeah, it's a process.
And then finally, we have a product, so it'll come.
Well, very well. Looking forward. Very excited. So Matthew, where else can people find you on besides? Is there anything coming up besides the documentaries? Are you writing another book or research?
Yeah. You are? Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm writing a book on the science unshackled, sort of going through the subversion of science from a few thousand years ago to the present.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So that's almost done. I have very little to do. Maybe that should come out by Christmas time, maybe November. My wife is also working on the occult origins of fascism, her volume 2 of her series, which is going to be crazy work. If people don't know how the Theosophists and Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley are tied to Nazism and fascism more generally, this book is for you.
It's overdue. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And
so otherwise, if people do want, we have a lot of author copies. So if people want to pick up any of our books, The Clash of the Two Americas, volume 1 to 4, or the Untold History of Canada books 1 to 4, or the Breaking Free of Anti-China Psyops, you can get signed copies from my wife and myself or her book by sending me an email to info@risingtidefoundation.net. If people would like to listen to our weekly seminars, we do every Sunday, experts on various fields that give presentations on either history or science or whatever. That's every Sunday. So people can also write an email to that same email, info@risingtidefoundation.net, and I can give you the links to that. Otherwise, just stay up on my Canadian Patriot website or my Substack. There's always good stuff that I try to put out there.
Wow. Well, Matthew, I'm really so grateful for your time and for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom, and really learned much. And I'm sure my listeners and followers too. So thank you so much again. And we hope we can continue our conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. I look forward to the next astroclimatology conversation. It'll be fun.
All right, take care. When you're in Austria.